Blood Time, the podcast that speaks to the bond, the emotion between coach and athlete at the interscholastic and intercollegiate level. Each interview, each segment will reveal that bond and what was learned, how they were transformed, and what each athlete took to the world at large from that transformation. These stories will warm your heart and astound you altogether. Submitted for your approval. Now it is blood time. I want to thank Serve Pro of Beechwood, our newest sponsor, and Jack Coslin, the owner. They serve all of Northeast Ohio, not just Beechwood. They specialize in disaster cleanup that leaves your home or office like new, like it never happened. Flood and water damage, fire, mold, and they say even blood and guts. Not just any Serve Pro. Seek out Serve Pro of Beechwood. That's Serve Pro Beechwood, Shaker Heights, ClevelandHeights.com, 216-464-4498. Operated by a former All-State wrestler from Beechwood, we love Serve Pro of Beechwood. Hey guys, welcome to Blood Time. This is Coach CIMORONI. I want to thank our last guest, Dr. Jen Welter, the first NFL coach, female NFL coach, and her code, Be Authentic. I loved it. She was told by everybody, just be yourself, and it will play well, and it did play well to this day. She was awesome. She was inspiring, and I really want to thank you, Jen. Today, another inspirational guy, go-getter, Mike Friedman, one of my good friends for years and years and years, also a co-coach of mine. I was the head coach at Beechwood High School in 1987-88, and he was the head basketball coach in 1987-88, but he also graduated from Beechwood High School a couple years before me, and I had the opportunity to watch him as an athlete as well. Michael, welcome.
Thanks, Peter. Glad to be here.
Oh, we're glad to have you in here. And so you just wrote a book, My Bible of Blunders, which is awesome, right? But more importantly, with a blunder comes obviously successes, but even more importantly, that getting up to bat to try. So talk to me a little bit about, your start as an athlete, and then what inspired you to get into coaching and then eventually into the business world and transfer that information.
Okay, great. Happy to do it. Happy to be here. First of all, it's a great question. I grew up as a basketball player. Loved basketball. I grew up in Cleveland Heights, Ohio, and then I transferred. My family moved to Beechwood. Reluctantly, I went with them. Tried to run away one day because I didn't want to go to Beechwood, but because I had my friends, and when you're 15 years old, that's all you know.
Right.
Grew up next door to a guy named Barry Shamus, who got me into basketball when I was 9 or 10 years old, and it was in my blood. And I was a decent player athletically. I was tall and somewhat fast, but I had small hands and small feet, which are not good traits to be a basketball player.
Right.
And I always really enjoyed the teamwork better than actually the individual part of basketball. And as a sophomore in high school, I started on the JV team, and then our senior year, we had a hell of a year. We had the best year, the first team in the history of that school in 1973 to win a tournament game. We actually won 2.
Right.
And my close friend, Bruce Kretsch, became All-City, and I led the city in assists. And I think I have a record that still stands there at 9.1 assists a game.
Wow.
And my freshman year, college, I wanted to play basketball at Ohio University.
Right.
And I got a taste of the reality. Athletically, and just skill-wise, I was not good enough to play Division I basketball, and probably not even good enough to play Division II or III. And I had a heart-to-heart with myself, and I said, you know what? And I'm glad it happened early. I wasn't going to be an NBA player. I wasn't going to even be a college player, but I wanted to be a coach. I always had kind of some natural, leadership skills, captains of the team and all that stuff. And as a freshman at Ohio University, I wrote a letter to then the recreation director, Jimmy Cowan.
Okay.
And I said, Jim, I want to start a basketball league. Fantastic. And they never had it before. And Jimmy still has the letter in his records, and he had it actually written in a frame at the recreation department for 15 years because it was about 40 mistakes. It was handwritten. There were no computers. I don't think I even knew how to use a typewriter. Right. And he gave me an opportunity, and I started the first Beechwood Summer League, and we had we actually had about 45 kids who came in between the ages of 6 years old to the age of 14.
Right.
And then I ran a men's adult league. And like anything in life, you build, and it was very successful.
Sure.
The second year, we had 200 kids.
Holy cow.
And it was in my blood, and I loved it.
Right.
Ended up graduating from the University of Arizona.
Okay.
And came home and wanted to be a coach. And unfortunately, when you don't know coaches and you weren't a great player yourself, it's very difficult.
Sure.
I wanted to get into college.
Especially then, because there's so many kids.
So tough.
I mean, I remember, when I played, there was so many wrestlers.
Yeah.
It was just like, it was crazy.
Very
competition was
very
unbelievable.
competitive,
Right.
and I didn't know really how to network, and I didn't have any connections. So
nobody knew how to network.
Nobody knew how.
There was no such thing as
That's right.
network. It was just like.
So here's my
That's right.
networking, and this is old school. Again, there's no
Right.
computers.
Sure.
And if you remember, in the old days in athletics, at the college world, there's only one resource. It was called the Blue Book.
Right.
And I borrowed the Blue Book from Case Western Reserve, which had 313
Did you borrow that in quotes, or did you return it?
I think I borrowed it in quotes from Bill Sudak. I think he, may he rest in peace, the old coach at Case Western Reserve, my old mentor.
Statute of limitations is over.
Correct.
Okay.
So that Blue Book, I hand wrote
Right.
and used a Xerox copy,
Sure.
313 letters to college athletic directors,
Wow.
Division 1, 2, 3, and junior colleges, and spent a lot of my own money, all my own money. It was a lot at the time on stamps, and sent out 313 letters. And believe it or not, only 4 came back, and the 4 basically blew me off.
Sure.
So that was my first year trying to be a college
Gee, thanks
coach.
for writing an FU letter.
That's exactly right. And I actually coached with Cleveland State as a volunteer.
Sure.
And I coached the Beechwood 8th grade team.
Wow.
And I ran some summer leagues with the YMCA. So I kept in
Yeah.
it.
You kept
The
your
second
fingers in it,
year,
yeah.
I changed my tactic. I did the same letter.
Right.
But this time I said, and I don't know, I got lucky. I don't know if somebody told me or I thought about it. I said, I'm going to be in your town between March 17th and April 3rd. I want to interview.
Brilliant.
I got 17 responses
Okay.
from Denny Crum from Louisville at the time, a guy from Louisiana State, Tracy Tripucka from Utah. The problem was everybody, if they said yes to that date, I couldn't be in all those places.
Right.
So it ended up a really good story. That was a time where, again, if any basketball fans out here listening, March Madness was started by Magic Johnson and Larry Bird's epic final game
Indiana State versus
Michigan State in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I was there. Wow. I bought a scalper ticket. I was in the 7th row. I still had the program. It's probably worth something. Wow. But during that time, I was traveling and interviewing.
Sure.
And, I didn't have a lot of backing except my love and passion, and ended up a guy at the University of California, Davis, Bob Hamilton, who passed away about 10 years ago, gave me an opportunity.
Wow.
And he said, you know what, I like what you've done. Come on here. So I packed my car, traveled 3 days to Davis, California. Didn't know a soul, didn't have any money, borrowed some money to go to graduate school, and I spent 2 great years there.
Fantastic.
And the most important thing I did there was I learned how to network, because I started working the basketball camps in the summertime to make ends meet. And a guy named Max Shapiro, who owned Great American Sport Camp, liked me. Yeah. And I did Jamal Wilkes, who's now a Hall of Fame basketball player out of Santa Barbara and UCLA. He's now a preacher. Silk, that's right. That's right. I ran his camp, and I did a pretty good job. And Max Shapiro said, I want you to work all my camps. And I got the opportunity to run Magic Johnson's first basketball camp in 1980 after he won this championship. And then I ran Pat Riley's basketball camp, and I had a great time. And I became
just pikers, man.
I became the camp guy. That's right. And then again, I'll really quickly. Yeah. After I got my master's degree, I had a job offer at Stanford. I turned it down because I wanted to come home. It was actually a smart move because the coach, Dick DiBiasio, who was the head coach, who was going to give me a kind of a I would have been the 4th assistant. Yeah. He got fired the next year. We all got fired.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
So I came back home to Cleveland. I worked for Bill Sudak at Case Western Reserve for 2 reasons. One is I was going to be the head assistant coach, even though it was a small college. And 2 is he let me run and start my own basketball camp, because that was really in my blood.
That's what you needed, yeah.
And I started a camp called the Spartan Basketball Camp, which went for 30 years. I only ran it for 2. Wow. First year, 80 kids. Second year, 300 kids.
Holy
and God. I had a lot of pro, college, high school stars that all went through that camp. As you know, as a coach, it's a pretty great feeling when you see them as young guys and then they mature. Yes. And then in 1983, a head coaching job opened at Dyke College.
Right.
I was only 28 years old. There were 91 applicants. I was the youngest.
Okay.
People thought I was crazy. I wasn't ready to be a head college coach, but I thought I was.
Sure.
And I had a good interview. But really what happened was I had 4 references, Magic Johnson, Pat Riley, Larry Chiat, who is probably the most famous coach out of Cleveland that made it in the college level in basketball, and then the athletic director, Cal Davis. And I got the job. Wow. And I became the winningest coach in the history of the school. Right. And then I retired early, 31, at 31, because I had married and I had a child, and my wife decided that it wasn't a good profession to make a living and support a family, and I chose my wife.
I resemble that remark. Right. I remember the exact same conversation with mine.
I chose my wife over my passion and career, and I went into sales and was a natural and started making money, but I was bored. And I got
the camaraderie is just not there. There's no way to recreate.
You can't recreate it. Can't recreate the coaching camaraderie or the playing camaraderie.
No, it's very difficult.
And I got an opportunity to come back to my alma mater at Beechwood High School, and worked 1 year and had a blast and won a championship. And finally, I got it out of my system.
I love it. Well, that was the year we were coaching together.
That's exactly right.
At Beechwood, and it's interesting what you're talking about networking. Think about here we sit. We're what, 2 feet apart?
Yep.
Okay, but we didn't talk when you were graduating high school or whatever.
That's right.
If we would have had a conversation that you wanted to get into coaching, and I had the foresight to call Jerry Tarkanian, who's my cousin,
right? I remember.
God rest his soul. What would have changed in your life?
Might have changed.
Isn't that the weirdest thing? Right. These sliding doors that
You're
life presents
right.
itself.
Yep.
That we could be sitting next to that person,
right.
and we don't even know what we don't know. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like I didn't even know how close my family was to Tark when I was that age. And I learned.
You introduced me to Tark. You might forget. Maybe at the Marriott, or one day you're at some bar and you introduced me to him. And then 35 years later, I was with Jerry Tarkanian at a restaurant in Del Mar, California, where Bobby Knight and all sorts of other coaches. Right. I was invited by a guy that Bobby Boyd, who's the head coach at USC, who was close friends with Tark. His son played for me at Cal Davis. I was working in the real estate business. He said, "Hey, you want to have every Wednesday during the Del Mar racing season, 15 coaches would come, including Tark, and they'd all hold court." And I was invited. So cool.
Oh my gosh, that is unbelievable.
So cool.
Well, it's interesting because we had a dinner at the house, and Tark was there, and we invited Kevin Mackey. Okay, so I have a picture
of Mackey and Tark.
I have a picture of me in the middle with John Carroll wrestling sweatshirt on, and under one arm is Tark, and the other arm is Kevin Mackey. Before the nonsense hit with the
but still to this day, 2 of the greatest defensive basketball coaches that ever lived.
I mean, just brilliant.
Tarkanian never got his credit. He was probably the greatest defensive coach of all time, and Mackey was a great defensive coach too. He just didn't, he got some problems.
Well, I remember bringing him in for Midnight Basketball.
Yeah.
Okay, and that was Randy Mintz was involved.
Yeah.
Okay, and he did the defensive clinic,
yep.
right? And he was so funny. People would pay for his book, okay? And he just charged $10, and he had this wads of tens.
Who, Mackey?
No. Tark.
Oh, Tark.
I mean, he was still, he was from Euclid.
Yeah, I know that.
So, and his father died young. Okay, his father died when he was in 8th grade, so he never ended up going to Euclid High School.
They moved to California, right? To Fresno?
Yeah, big Armenian community out there, and so that's where he matriculated out there.
Got it.
Interesting story. But he was still a street kid from Euclid, and he was stuffing his pockets with $10 bills. But let's get back to so you get into the business world, you find it a little bit dispassionate. You find you're making a living, you're making a good living, you're supporting your beautiful bride Cindy, right? Who also went to Beechwood, dear girl, and you have some kids. But where are you finding your passion? So now take us to the next step.
What I learned, and if anybody wants to read the book, My Bible of Blunders, all the mistakes.
Yeah.
What I learned is something that I learned early, that skill sets can be transitioned and can be transferred. So my skill set of coaching, which is what? Recruiting, motivating, and managing, can be taken into different disciplines.
Let me stop you for a second. What coach inspired you? This blood time moment.
Yep. Okay.
What coach said to Michael Friedman, and Michael Friedman somehow articulated that to himself, I can do this?
2 coaches.
Okay.
One who I met later on. I read his book, but the one before that was Larry Chiat, who I mentioned before.
There you go. Yeah.
So when I was in 7th grade, Larry Chiat was a senior at Cleveland Heights High School and told me, that's the time people start smoking and drinking and, kind of getting away from what you're supposed to do.
We came out of the 60s.
Right. We were all supposed to do it. And
Sure.
Larry basically said, hey, you're an athlete.
Right.
And one day you're going to be a leader.
Yep.
He said, don't smoke and drink. And believe it or not, I'm going to be 65 next week. I've never smoked a cigarette or drank alcohol. That's the impression Larry Chiat did. Now, Larry Chiat, just 30 seconds in his career, he was an assistant college coach for 24 years.
Wow.
He was at Clemson. He was at New Mexico. He was at Providence. He was at Cleveland State. He was at Akron. He was at Utah, and finally got his first head coaching job in his 50s.
Wow!
Talk about paying his dues at Clemson.
Okay.
And then he went to Wyoming, and he went to Wyoming twice. But the interesting thing about Wyoming, for any Cleveland listeners, he's the one that recruited Larry Nance Jr. And he's the one that helped Larry Nance Jr. come from an average player at Revere High School to now, an NBA player making several $1 million. That's all Larry. Larry retired twice, and then now he's Rick Carlisle's defensive coordinator at the Dallas Mavericks. So he's been a role model for me for 40 years.
Holy cow!
And then my sophomore year in college, when I realized I wasn't good enough to play, I came home during the Christmas vacation, and it was a cold winter night, and I brought John Wooden's book, and The Wizard of Westwood, and it just resonated with me, and I couldn't put the book down. I literally read it all night and all day, and I decided then I'm gonna go for this.
I love that because I quote Wooden's.
Yep.
I know
the pyramid of success and all that.
I'm better than no man, and no man is better than me.
Right.
And I tell the kids, when you got get on that mat, you got to think that way.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, but I love that, and so you get this kernel, this core. I can do it from these 2 guys, maybe more, bits and pieces, right? And now we take that to our coaching career. Now we take that into the business world. Okay, so now we're recruiting, we're motivating, we're systematizing it. Tell me more. So
I'm on a long bus ride from Cleveland to West Virginia when I was a coach at Dyke, and an Italian kid named Kenny Corrado, who worked for Antonio's Pizza at Beechwood Place, started telling me about pizza.
Gotcha.
And he said, there's a lot of money to be made from pizza, and one day maybe we should start something. And when I decided to get out of even the 1 year at high school, I thought, maybe one day I'll call Kenny up. I called him up. I said, what do you think? He said, that's too hard. And, it was just a crazy idea we had on a bus ride, but the idea resonated with me. And I thought, wow, owning a restaurant, which I had no experience, zero, and no money, and no mentors to help me. But I thought, you know what? That would maybe be able to my skill set of recruiting, bringing people in, motivating, helping my staff work hard, and basically managing the whole process. I like the idea. So I decided, believe it or not, in a whim, to open a pizza restaurant. Crazy whim. If I would have known years later what I knew then, I probably wouldn't have done it. Traveled across the country for 2.5 months looking for the best pizza in the country. Ended up getting a franchise out of Rochester, New York called Captain Tony's Pizza and Pasta Emporium.
Had many dinners there with my team. Absolutely.
And Beechwood probably.
Absolutely.
I opened my first one in 1989. Well, let me take you 30 seconds back because it's important. So I had the dream. I sold the franchisor in giving a guy without experience and money a franchise. That was easy. That was only $10,000. And he carried the paper because I didn't have any money.
Right.
But the hard part was raising the money to open the restaurant.
Right.
Went to 7 banks.
Holy cow.
In my nice 3-piece suit. Everybody knew me as a coach. Had a good reputation. And all 7 of them kicked me out and said, no history, no collateral, and we don't want to do restaurants.
Of course, and back then the banks...
they were afraid. And 2 of them offered me jobs as a banker,
of course.
But nobody offered me money.
Right.
So I did my first of now many seminars that I've conducted at my dad's house because I had a small little house, had 20 friends and family, and basically raised $200,000. In the world of capital raising, we call it the 3 C's. Right. We call it conversation, we call commitment, and we call it collection. So it's easy to talk about it.
Right.
It's tougher to get people to commit. Really tough
hard
for people
to write the check.
To write the check. So I raised $240. Ended up collecting $200,000.
Right.
We opened up our first restaurant in Shaker Square in 1989, March 17th.
Yep.
We performed at $440,000, and we did $1.1 million, and we were off to the races. Opened my second one in Rocky River. 7 months later. My third one in Beechwood. 4 months after that.
Right.
Again, mistakes. In my book, you can read about it.
I will.
I should have only stayed with my one.
Thank you for the book.
You're welcome. I was making a lot more money in one than I was in three.
Gotcha.
But again, your ego gets a little big. You think if you can do this money in one, you'll do the same in three and you'll be rich.
Right.
Doesn't work that way. And again, fundamental thing I've learned in my career.
Yes.
In all business and in coaching.
Sure.
You got to learn to delegate.
Right.
But you're the boss or you're the head coach. You have to be there. You have to be invested. And when I had three, it was very hard. When I had seven, it was extraordinarily difficult.
Sure.
Because I wasn't hiring and recruiting everybody anymore. I had general managers and managers. People that worked for me didn't even know who I was. Right. I lost the touch. Yeah. And then I started a speaking company. And every time I traveled, I made like $500 to make a speech. Yeah. I came home, I was losing $1,000 because I wasn't minding my restaurant. Correct. And in any business I've done since then or before then, you got to mind the store. You got to mind the store. Develop skill sets of being on time, treating people right, having passion. Yeah. That's more important than the actual fundamentals of accounting or business management or the analytics or logistics and all these buzz terms that kids are going in graduate school and undergraduate school for. Yeah. There's certain fundamentals that you need to have, and you learn those. It's easier. Now, not easy, but easier to then move forward. So if you want to, the rest of the history is, so in 1999, after 10 years, no experience, mind you, and running very successful restaurants, I got a call from a very dear friend and a very wealthy and smart friend who you know named Dean Adler from the Lupert Adler Funds. Sure. And he said, look, I think you're wasting your talents.
One of the most brilliant REIT men in the country.
Yeah, probably the top 5 real estate fund guys in the United States.
Yes. And out of Philly, right?
He's out of Philly. Yeah. And recognized around the country.
Right. With Ira Lupert.
Ira Lupert
who
is
was also partner. One of the top wrestlers.
One of the great champions at Penn State.
Yes, exactly.
And he's the biggest promoter of Penn State wrestling there is.
I believe he was one of the biggest reasons why Cale is over there, Sanderson.
100%. Okay. He recruited and hired him.
Gotcha.
That's exactly
right.
So
thank you, Ira. Thank you, Dean. God bless. All right, go ahead.
So Dean said to me, Mike, you're wasting your talents. You're chasing 200 kids, Generation X before the millennials, Generation X around. Sure. You're making a good living, but you can make a lot more in the sales and real estate world. Okay. Don't know why I had the confidence, but I sold all my restaurants. Right. And I went to work in a business that I didn't really know anything about. Sure. Real estate. You know, I did a few.
So you recreated yourself again.
Recreated myself again, and I knew I just had the confidence. You know, I have an expression: the faith to move a mountain is the reward for those who have moved hills.
Well said.
So, you know, when you make little accomplishments, one of the biggest awards of single small accomplishments and small goals is the confidence to do bigger goals.
Love it.
So I had the confidence to do that. They wanted me to move to Florida. My wife and my 4 children said no, so I listened to them. So I was an off-site guy, and we just, in 1999 to 2004, the Ginn Company, I was the 23rd employee. Bobby Ginn. Yeah. When I left to start my own company, we were 3,000. We started with 1 development in Hammock Beach, Northeast Florida. Sure. We ended up with 13 developments. We sold $3.4 billion, that's with a B, dollars of real estate. It was a home run. Now, again, we had times we're good. Sure. We had the wind at our back, but we were the best, what we call launch marketing company in the United States.
Yes, you were.
I learned those skills. I decided to take it on my own. I started my own fund. And then in 2005, a fellow Clevelander named Scott Berkowitz joined my company, and we opened up a resort residential development called Liberty Harbor in Brunswick, Georgia. I know we have limited time, so I'm going to go fast. Sure. From Brunswick, Georgia, we went to California at a place called Montessoro. From California, I went to Mexico in a place called Bahia Principe.
I remember you calling me from there for something. Because I met with Dean
used to
about
do
something.
Seminars and all that. From Mexico, I went to Colorado. From Colorado, I went to New Mexico, a place called Silver Lake. From New Mexico, I went to New York. From New York, I went to North Dakota. And that was the last 8 or 10 years I was on the road, mostly selling. Okay. And then in North Dakota, my partner was a Clevelander. We were developing cabins for the oil workers. It was a big rock
shale oil and all that.
That's
right.
Absolutely. It was a big boom. Big boom. We were killing it, and he just left because it was 40 below zero. The girls looked like guys. You needed two planes to get there, and I was stuck kind of there. I mean, I wasn't stuck, but he was my partner. He was. Sure. And so I recreated myself one more time in 2013. Instead of selling now, instead of developing, I was raising capital because there was a lot of developers that had all this demand, and they couldn't get money. North Dakota banks were used to lending $50,000 to a plow.
Of course.
A farm.
Yeah,
we were now needing $20 million for residential communities
they had
for all these oil workers.
No idea what to do. Right, exactly.
And I had a pretty good reputation in New York and Chicago and San Francisco where the money is.
Right.
Started raising a lot of money. And then in 2014, I got a call from a friend of mine named Nico Bolzen. And he said, Mike, he said, Mike, you're an idiot. I said, why? I said, why are you raising money in North Dakota? I work for a guy named Frank Sanito in Cleveland, and he could use your help.
Millennium Housing Management, Lock Keepers, Marble Room.
That's right. All that.
What amazing
Marble
dude.
Room before I got there. But I mean, after I got there. But
amazing dude.
Amazing dude. And we bonded. Nico left the company to work for somewhere else. Frank offered me the job.
Nico at one time was with Smart Business.
He was.
All those
he
guys.
was.
Yeah, I remember talking to him on many occasions.
He was.
Yeah,
he was very connected.
Yeah, good
Talk
guy.
about networking.
Exactly.
He's a great networker.
Yeah.
So I started working for Frank, and it's been a great run. I actually literally just left Frank 3 months ago, but I worked for Frank for 5 years.
Wow.
Proud to tell you, I raised $300 million.
Holy cow.
We went from 17,000 apartment units to 30,000, and we opened up a bunch of now restaurants as well as some really cool places in Cleveland, Ohio.
Sure.
And
well, didn't you do the Key Tower?
We just did the Key Tower, which was my
is
deal.
Isn't that the largest?
It's the largest building between New York and Chicago, and I
Right.
put together the mezzanine debt and all the equity.
I remember talking to you about that.
Yeah, it was the
phenomenal.
single biggest financial accomplishment I'd ever did. Actually, the day after we closed, I went to Delray Beach for a month.
I love
with
it.
my wife and just hung out.
Decompress.
And now my new company, which is not new, it's been around since 2009, but now I'm working full time in it again. It's called the Revision Group.
Sure.
And what I do is instead of raising capital for one guy like Frank, I raise capital for sponsors around the country.
So Revision, tell me why is it called the Revision?
I had a marketing girl in Colorado, and she liked the idea. Actually, it was about reinventing yourself and kind of looking at. She's a very good marketer.
Reflecting and then looking forward.
That's
correct. Vision, but reflecting, then looking. I like that.
That's exactly right.
That's cool.
And it's been doing really, really well. We just opened our second office in Greenwich, Connecticut, and
congratulations.
We're real excited about it. We're 2019 was a big year. We think 2020 will be the best year ever.
I love this, and Michael, the thing about I think just coaching, right, is also coaching yourself, right? And I tell the kids, I said, be a coach to yourself and also to the guy that you're wrestling with, so your wrestling partner. And what I love about this story is I coached myself when I turned 60. I said 60 is going to be my most prolific decade in my entire existence.
I'm with you.
So I'm working harder, smarter, faster. Yeah, and I said this, and so this came to me. What we're doing here. We're sitting here. We said, this came. Cool. I have to do this. So you're saying to yourself, I got to do this, right?
That's
it's
exactly
not even
right.
a question of if, when, I got to do it. So you're doing it. So what's your vision for the Revision Group moving forward?
Well, I like the fact that you and I are aligned. If you do a little research, you'll find, and I'm gonna put it on a board for that appreciation party I'm having, many people have made majority of their wealth after 60 years old. So we are
right on.
we are right on. So the vision of the Revision Group is I want to have another 10-year run.
Love it.
Every sponsor, the sponsor is a term we use for developer, builder. They all need what we call equity. They all need money. No matter how wealthy they are, they all need other people's money.
Right.
And now I have a very, very good niche and a great reputation.
Awesome.
We want to build this to look, I don't want to be a developer. I don't want to own apartments. I don't want to own hotels.
Right.
I want to be the middleman to help people that do it better, that do it professionally, that do it every day. Doing it. I want to coach them. And by the way, speaking about coaching, my most valuable asset to the company and my role is to coach the sponsor of what they have to prepare for the investment community.
Brilliant. So preparation,
what they're looking for. Look, everybody watches Shark Tank and they see these people up there. But the bottom line is a mini Shark Tank because when you go in front of the big Wall Street guys,
you better be tight.
You need to have certain characteristics of yourself, of your business, and you got to have a professional offer memorandum.
No doubt.
And we teach them how to do that, to have just increase their probability of having the people look at it. Are we talking about Dean Adler?
Yes.
He gets 40 deals a week.
Oh, I'm sure.
40 deals a week.
Yeah.
What differentiates what he's going to look at is generally what the offer memorandum's executive summary says in the first two paragraphs.
And I guarantee you, Dean can even sniff that. Doesn't even have to look at it.
He can sniff it.
Absolutely.
If it comes in a little cardboard paper, he's throwing it. If it comes in a nice man, at least somebody put a little money and time into it. Sure. And at least he considers that.
It's interesting, too, because on my third episode, I interviewed a guy named Barry Broom. Barry Broom wrestled for us at John Carroll.
Okay.
He's the president of the Greater Sacramento Economics Council.
Wow.
Okay. You talk about going into CEOs.
Wow.
And he said what wrestling got him to do is be the most prepared guy in the room. He says, when I walk in there, I'm the most confident guy, and I meet CEOs of the biggest of the biggest. Okay.
Right.
And so I love that philosophy. I love what you're bringing to the marketplace, because preparation is also not only confidence, but it's also a respect of your audience.
Absolutely. Well, you know what Ray Lewis says? The 5 Ps. You know the 5 Ps? Preparation prevents poor performance.
I love it.
I'll say it one more time.
Right.
Proper preparation prevents poor performance.
I love
and that's the greatest, I think, the greatest linebacker that's ever lived.
And he was a two-time heavyweight champion for Georgia or Florida.
I didn't know that.
Yes. He loved
I knew you
wrestling.
had to go your wrestling.
He loved wrestling, man. He loved wrestling. Well, I mean, hey, we've got a lot of wrestlers that are very successful in football.
Absolutely.
So there's no question about
Absolutely.
that. So, Michael, thank you for coming in. I could talk to you for another,
we
hour
could.
or so. Absolutely. Maybe we'll do this again. And, we're going to do that. We're going to bring guests back. And and whether you love him or hate him, my hero in interviewing style, without question, is Howard Stern.
Yeah,
and he's our generation, right?
He's great.
And it's interesting because
I love him.
Howard Stern has the exact opposite experience that I do in high school, because he went to a school with African Americans that beat the snot out of him because he was this gangly white kid, right?
Right.
I went to an all-Jewish school,
right?
And my way of competing with you guys was through insults, was through intellect. We didn't fist fight.
No.
We insulted.
We used our words, right?
Exactly right. So it's kind of funny when I hear him, but he really gets to the meat of the interview, and I love that. Whether you like his politics or you like his style or whatever, you cannot deny what he does when it comes to this. And so, saying that, I really appreciate you coming here. We could talk, and we're going to bring you back. But what we like you to do is leave our audience with some nugget or nuggets that you would say to them. Do this, and you will very much. Get a pot of gold, if you will, or some lesson learned.
Well, if you don't mind me copying what you told me at the beginning,
please do.
I think there's one of the reasons for my success has been authenticity. And I know the lady just before me had said it because when I deal with, and I do deal with billionaires, I've learned that when you deal with people that have more power and wealth, they mostly respect not that you want to be like them, that you're like yourself, and you don't want to ask them you can ask them how they did it, but you don't want to ask anything of them. And that's been a very, very strong secret to my success, in just being authentic. And I will tell you that, as Zig Ziglar said, again, in our generation, and the kids that are listening don't even know who he is, every day you get up is way better option than not getting up.
Exactly.
And so, and you got to really, and then, look, you're coming to a party I'm having.
I can't wait.
Being grateful
is,
and you hear this from a lot of people, but the concept of being grateful. So if you noticed every email I've ever written in the last 20 years, I don't say sincerely, I say thanks.
Yes.
And people even think it's a little obnoxious. I'm on the phone, thanks. Yeah. But you know what? It goes a long way. Absolutely. We all need other people. Absolutely. And I especially need other people. I've got no success without a lot of people. So understanding that, again, if you want to get deeper into it, getting a mentor, getting a mastermind, these are all important things for young people, because without it, you cannot do it alone. That would be my last message. You cannot do it alone if you want success with your family, we want success with business, we want success with sports. You have to have people in your corner.
Well, I celebrate that because I celebrate with my closing is cheers.
Yeah.
So cheers to you. Thank you so much, Michael Friedman, a basketball player, basketball coach, but more importantly, a coach of life. Fantastic. success with the revision group,
with
your book, My Bible of Blunders. Get it wherever you can get it. Amazon,
$12.99. It's a quick, easy read. You'll enjoy it.
Absolutely. I can't wait to be at your party. But thank you again. We are Blood. This is Coach CIMORONI. Love to all.
I want to share my thought of the day with you. Be that nail that can take and welcome the hammering, keeping everything together.